ChatGPT said. Mr. Scott was the CEO of a large technology company in the middle of a busy city. He was known for being smart, hardworking, and always focused on getting the best results for his company. On this special morning, Mr. Scott felt excited but also a little worried. Today, he was supposed to meet with a group of very important Japanese investors who might help his company grow to a whole new level. The whole office knew that this deal could mean millions of dollars and many new jobs for everyone. Weeks of planning had gone into this meeting. The boardroom was spotless, the best coffee was brewing, and everyone was dressed in their nicest clothes. The staff practiced their speeches, and Mr. Scott made sure that every little detail was perfect. He checked the slides for the presentation one last time, made sure there were enough chairs, and even tested the microphones. Everything seemed ready for a perfect meeting. But then, just as people started to relax, the phone rang in Mr. Scott's office. It was the company's regular translator, Mrs. Evans, who was supposed to translate every word from English to Japanese and back. She had always been reliable, but now she sounded weak and sick on the phone. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Scott," she said, coughing. "I woke up this morning with a fever. The doctor says I can't come in. I know how important this meeting is, but I really can't make it." Mr. Scott's heart started to beat faster. He tried to stay calm, but he knew how much depended on having a good translator. None of his staff spoke Japanese fluently, and he didn't want to risk any misunderstandings. He quickly called his assistant, telling her to find another translator as soon as possible. She started calling every translation agency in the city, but everyone was already booked or too far away. Time was running out and the meeting was about to start. In the hallway, people could feel the tension. Secretaries whispered to each other, wondering what would happen if the translator didn't show up. The sales team tried to practice some Japanese phrases from the internet, but their accents were so bad that they made each other laugh nervously. Mr. Scott looked at his watch again and again, hoping for a miracle. At the same time, Samuel, the company's janitor, was quietly cleaning the halls. Samuel had worked at the company for many years. He was friendly and always did his job well, but most people barely noticed him. Samuel took pride in his work, and he always made sure that the building looked nice, even if people didn't thank him. Samuel's daughter, Maya, often waited for him in the lobby after school. She was a shy but intelligent girl who loved to read books and learn new things. Her father couldn't afford to hire a babysitter, so Maya would sit quietly in the corner, doing her homework or reading while Samuel finished his shift. While Samuel was emptying a trash bin, he heard raised voices coming from the conference room. He saw Mr. Scott pacing back and forth, looking very worried. Samuel didn't want to interrupt, but he cared about the people he worked with and decided to ask if he could help in any way. "Excuse me, sir, is everything all right?" Samuel asked quietly. Mr. Scott stopped and looked at Samuel. For a moment he hesitated, but then he let out a deep sigh. "No, Samuel, everything is not all right. We're supposed to have a big meeting with Japanese investors in a few minutes, but our translator is sick. We can't find anyone to help us. If we can't communicate, we might lose the deal." Samuel nodded, understanding the seriousness of the problem. He thought for a moment, then remembered something special about his daughter. "Sir, I know this might sound strange, but my daughter Maya is really good with languages. She's been learning Japanese at school and online for a couple of years. Maybe she could help if you want." Mr. Scott looked surprised. He glanced toward the lobby, where Maya sat quietly reading a book. "Your daughter speaks Japanese?" he asked, unsure if he should believe it. He was desperate, but this was a very important meeting. Could he really trust a teenager to translate for such an important deal? Samuel nodded again. "She got a special award last year for her Japanese. I know she's young, but she's smart and works hard. Maybe she can help just for today." Time was almost up, and Mr. Scott realized he had no other choice. "Right," he said. "Let's give her a try. Please ask Maya to come in." Samuel hurried to Maya and explained the situation. Maya's eyes grew wide with surprise. She had never been in a boardroom before, and she was nervous about speaking in front of important business people. But she wanted to help her father. So she took a deep breath and agreed to try. As Maya followed her father into the meeting room, she could feel her heart beating faster. The big wooden table was surrounded by serious-looking men in suits, and the Japanese investors sat quietly at the end, waiting politely. Mr. Scott quickly explained the situation to everyone and introduced Maya as their translator. The room was silent for a moment as the Japanese investors looked at Maya. One of them greeted her in Japanese. Maya bowed politely and replied in fluent Japanese, using the polite form she had practiced so many times. The investor smiled and everyone in the room seemed to relax just a little bit. Mr. Scott felt a wave of relief wash over him. For now it seemed like things might just work out. He hoped that Maya would be able to handle the pressure and that her language skills would be enough to save the day. Meanwhile, the rest of the staff gathered quietly outside the conference room, whispering about what was happening. Some were doubtful, thinking that a janitor's daughter couldn't possibly handle such a big responsibility. Others were hopeful, remembering times when ordinary people had surprised everyone. Inside the room, Maya listened carefully to each person, translating their words with care. Her voice was calm, and she didn't let her nerves show. The Japanese investors started to speak more freely, asking questions about the company and sharing their thoughts. Maya translated every word, making sure nothing was lost in communication. Mr. Scott and his team followed her lead, answering questions and explaining their ideas as clearly as possible. For the first time that morning, there was a feeling of hope in the air. People started to believe that maybe, just maybe, this unexpected translator could help them save the deal after all. As the meeting continued, Maya grew more confident. She remembered everything she had learned from her teachers and from watching Japanese shows online. She even added small cultural notes to help Mr. Scott understand the investors' way of thinking. Little by little, the meeting started to feel less like a disaster and more like a chance for everyone to work together. But no one knew yet how important Maya's role would become. For now, they were just grateful that she was there, helping them through a crisis they had never expected. And outside the room, Samuel stood quietly, hoping his daughter's kindness and hard work would make a difference. He had always believed in her, even if others had not. As he watched her speak so confidently, he felt a deep sense of pride and love. The first part of the story ended with a feeling of hope and quiet determination. The CEO, the janitor, and his daughter were about to show everyone that sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places. Maya sat at the end of the long conference table, her back straight and her hands folded tightly in her lap. All around her, grown-ups in fancy suits whispered to each other, casting curious glances in her direction. She could feel their eyes on her, and she knew that most of them were surprised to see a teenage girl sitting among so many powerful people. But Maya tried her best to stay calm and remember why she was there: to help her father, to help the company. Samuel, Maya's father, stood quietly in the hallway, just outside the glass doors. He watched his daughter with a mixture of pride and worry. He knew how smart she was, but he also knew how hard it could be to prove yourself when nobody expects much from you. Samuel remembered his own first days at the company, how he had been careful not to make mistakes or draw too much attention. Now Maya was at the center of everyone's attention. The pressure was much greater. Inside the room, the CEO, Mr. Scott, watched Maya with a careful eye. He was still nervous. This was a huge moment for the company, and he knew that one mistake could ruin everything. But as he listened to Maya introduce herself in fluent Japanese, he began to relax. The Japanese investors nodded politely and even smiled, a rare sign of approval. Maya's words sounded smooth and confident, and it was clear that she had practiced many times before. The meeting started slowly. Mr. Scott welcomed the investors and thanked them for their time. Maya translated every sentence, her voice steady and clear. She listened carefully to the Japanese responses, then repeated them in perfect English for the team. The staff, who at first had seemed doubtful and tense, began to feel more comfortable as they watched Maya handle each question with ease. As the conversation went on, Maya noticed small details that helped her do her job even better. Dado dada dado dada dado dad. When the lead investor, Mr. Sato, leaned forward in his chair, Maya knew he was about to ask an important question. When another investor tapped his fingers on the table, Maya could sense that he was impatient or worried. Maya paid attention to these small things, just as her favorite teacher, Mrs. Tanaka, had taught her. Language is more than words, Mrs. Tanaka used to say. It's about understanding people's hearts. At one point, Mr. Scott hesitated, unsure how to answer a question about the company's plans for the Japanese market. He glanced at Maya, who noticed his uncertainty. Quickly, Maya offered a helpful suggestion in English, whispering a possible answer that was both honest and respectful of Japanese business culture. Mr. Scott repeated her suggestion, and the investors seemed pleased with his response. Maya felt a rush of confidence. She realized that she was not just translating words. She was helping to build a bridge between two groups of people from different worlds. She was making it possible for them to understand each other, even when things got complicated. As the meeting continued, Maya's skills became more and more important. The investors asked about everything: the company's technology, their plans for growth, and even the way the team worked together. Maya translated each question carefully, making sure that nothing was misunderstood. She paid special attention to words that could mean different things in different languages, choosing her translations with care. Sometimes the conversation turned serious, and everyone in the room leaned forward to listen. Other times, someone made a small joke, and Maya translated it in a way that made both sides laugh. These moments of laughter helped everyone relax and remembered that they were all just people trying to do their best. Meanwhile, outside the conference room, word had spread about what was happening inside. Office workers gathered near the door, whispering excitedly. Many of them had never even noticed Maya before, but now they were eager to see how she would do. Some people wondered if the meeting would fail, but others hoped that Maya would surprise everyone. Back inside, Mr. Sato asked a question that made the room go quiet. He wanted to know what made this company different from all the others. Why should they trust Mr. Scott's team with such a large investment? Mr. Scott took a deep breath. He looked at Maya, who nodded encouragingly. Then he began to speak from the heart, telling the story of how the company had started in a small garage. They had always worked hard and treated each other like family. Maya translated his words with warmth and feeling, making sure the investors understood every emotion behind them. As Maya spoke, she remembered her father's words from the night before. People remember how you make them feel. She tried to make her voice gentle and honest, and she could see the investors listening closely. Some of them smiled, while others nodded thoughtfully. Even the most serious-looking investor relaxed a little. When Mr. Scott finished, there was a brief silence. Then Mr. Sato thanked him for his honesty and shared a story of his own, about the challenges his company had faced and the importance of trust. Maya translated every word, feeling the mood in the room shift. It was as if a wall had come down between the two sides, and now they could finally understand each other. For Samuel, waiting outside, the minutes seemed to pass slowly. He watched people walk by, some of them glancing into the room with curiosity. A few stopped to ask him what was happening, and he told them about Maya's role in the meeting. Some were amazed, while others seemed doubtful. But Samuel believed in his daughter, and he knew that she was doing her best. As the hours passed, Maya's nerves began to fade away. She found a rhythm in the conversation, answering questions quickly and smoothly. The investors seemed to trust her more with each passing minute, sometimes asking her for small clarifications or advice. Maya did her best to answer politely and thoughtfully, always remembering to show respect. Near the end of the meeting, one of the investors made a polite request. He wanted to know if Maya could explain a complex technical problem that the company's engineers were working on. Maya had read about the project in her father's notes, and she carefully explained the details in Japanese, using simple words and examples that made the problem easy to understand. The investors were impressed. They began to ask Maya more questions, wanting her opinion on different topics. Mr. Scott noticed this and smiled, feeling proud of how well Maya was doing. For the first time all day, he felt hopeful that the meeting might succeed. Finally, the meeting ended. Everyone stood up, shaking hands and bowing politely. Mr. Scott thanked Maya for her help, and the Japanese investors thanked her as well, telling her in Japanese that she had done a wonderful job. Maya blushed and thanked them back, feeling happy and relieved. As the investors left the room, they spoke quietly to each other, nodding and smiling. Mr. Scott watched them go, feeling a sense of pride and gratitude. He turned to Maya and said, "You saved us today. Thank you." Maya smiled shyly. She felt proud, not just because she had helped with the meeting, but because she had done something important for her father and for herself. Samuel rushed into the room, hugged his daughter tightly, and said, "I knew you could do it." Other staff members started to gather around, some clapping and others shaking Maya's hand. For the first time, people who had never even noticed her before wanted to talk to her and ask about her story. Maya felt a little overwhelmed, but also happy that her hard work had finally been recognized. As the excitement died down, Maya realized that her life had changed in just a few hours. She had started the day as the janitor's daughter, quietly doing her homework in the lobby. She was someone everyone in the company respected and admired. And deep down, she knew that this was just the beginning of a new. Maya walked into the conference room feeling both nervous and excited. The Japanese investors were already seated, their faces calm but their eyes sharp. She took a deep breath, reminded herself of her purpose, and offered them a polite bow. Mr. Scott and his team sat behind her, ready to speak, but this time the investors seemed more relaxed. The long first meeting and the technical discussion had built a bridge between the two groups. Now they wanted to dig deeper, to find the real strengths and weaknesses, and to see if they could trust this young translator who had already helped them so much. The lead investor, Sato, began by asking about market strategy. He spoke slowly, in Japanese, and Maya translated his words into English clear enough for the team to follow. As she spoke, she noticed a slight furrow forming between Mr. Takahashi's eyebrows. He was the investor in charge of local sales in Japan. His body language told Maya that he had a worry he was not voicing. She paused for a moment after translating. In a gentle voice, she asked, "Does anyone have any other concerns?" She then explained in Japanese that the team was open and wanted to answer every question. Investors exchanged glances, and Mr. Takahashi nodded and spoke up. He asked about finding the right partners in Japan. He wanted to know if the company had contacts in local firms who could help with distribution and after-sales support. Maya translated the question, and she could see the American team shifting in their seats. They had talked about expansion plans, but they had not worked out all the details yet. Mr. Scott looked at Maya, and she gave him an encouraging nod. He stood and said, "We have a few contacts, but we want to find more. We're open to suggestions and can work with you to find the best local partners." Maya turned his words into polite Japanese, adding that they valued this partnership and were ready to learn from local experts. The investors seemed pleased. They smiled and exchanged a few words in Japanese. Then the conversation moved to data. Security. One investor, Ms. Suzuki, asked about how the company protected user information and complied with strict privacy laws. Maya listened to the detailed explanation from the technology manager, who spoke in technical English terms about encryption, server locations, and compliance standards. When he finished, Maya paused and condensed the information into a clear summary. They use strong encryption, store data in secure servers in Japan and the United States, and follow the highest global standards for privacy. The investors nodded, and Ms. Suzuki said that she felt more confident knowing the team took privacy seriously. At that moment, Maya remembered a detail from her studies, a story about a Japanese hospital that tested new software carefully before it went live. She quietly suggested in English, "Maybe you could share a short case study with them, showing exactly how you tested this in a real setting." Mr. Scott immediately agreed. He asked the manager to bring up the slides with the pilot study in Osaka, as the screen showed charts and photos of the testing process. Maya translated each point with care, adding that the company had worked closely with doctors and nurses to make sure everything was safe. The investors leaned forward, clearly impressed that the team had practical experience, not just theory. Then something even more surprising happened. After reviewing the pilot study, one of the investors turned to Maya and asked, "What do you think? Would you feel safe using this software in your own school or home?" Maya's heart skipped a beat. He was asking her, a teenager, for her honest opinion. She took a moment to think. In English, she said, "I think the software is good, but some of the menus are hard to read for people my age. If they made the buttons bigger and used clearer icons, more students and teachers would find it easy to use." She translated her own words into Japanese. The investors smiled broadly. Mr. Scott and the engineers looked surprised. He said, "That is a great idea, Maya. Thank you. You can work on a new design that is more user-friendly." Maya turned his words into polite Japanese, and the investors clapped softly, pleased that their young translator was also offering valuable insights. When, for the first time, Maya saw the investors treating her not just as a translator, but as a bridge to younger users and fresh ideas. While the engineers discussed design changes, Maya noticed that one of the investors, Mr. Yamamoto, was tapping his foot and looking down at his notes. That gentle tapping told her he had another worry, almost like a drumbeat of doubt. She paused the technical talk and asked in English, "Is there another question or concern we haven't covered?" She translated the question, and Mr. Yamamoto spoke up. He asked if it would be possible to spread the payments over 2 years instead of 1, to make the cash flow easier for his company. Maya translated this carefully, mindful that negotiation over money could be delicate. Mr. Scott nodded. "We can do that," he said. "We understand the need for a flexible plan. How about a schedule of 60% in the first year and 40% in the second?" Maya turned his words into Japanese, and Mr. Yamamoto's eyebrows lifted. Turned to his team and said, "Yes, that would work." Maya translated their acceptance, and the room felt a wave of relief. The deal was starting to take shape, with terms that everyone could live with. As the discussion moved toward final details, Maya remembered another cultural note. In Japan, it was polite to give a small gift to a new business partner as a sign of respect. She quietly spoke to Mr. Scott in English. "Maybe you could mention a gift, like a small box of local chocolates, to show our thanks." Mr. Scott liked the idea. When the investors asked about closing remarks, he said, "We want to show our gratitude for your time. We will send a small gift from our hometown local chocolates that represent our appreciation." Maya translated the offer, and the investors exchanged smiles. One of them said, "That is very kind. We look forward to it." The atmosphere in the room felt warmer as they turned to signatures. Maya carefully read aloud the final terms, making sure each number and each word was correct. The investors nodded as she spoke, showing they agreed. Mr. Scott and Mr. Sato signed the letter of intent side by side, and as the pens lifted, the room burst into polite applause. After the papers were signed, the investors stood and bowed deeply. Maya bowed back, and Mr. Scott shook each of their hands. The investors asked to take a photo with Maya and the team. They smiled for the camera, and Maya felt her cheeks grow warm again, but this time with pride. A few of the investors whispered in Japanese, "She is amazing." Maya later found out they had been talking about her calm voice and smart suggestions. When the meeting ended, everyone gathered in the lobby. Staff members who had never spoken to Maya came up to congratulate her. They clapped her on the back and thanked her for her help. Samuel pushed through the crowd to hug his daughter tightly. She felt safe in his arms and whispered, "We did it, Papa." He smiled and nodded, tears in his eyes as they walked out. Of the building, Maya looked up at her father. The sun was shining, and the city felt full of possibility. She realized that no matter how small someone might seem, it could make a big difference when they paid attention, used their skills, and showed respect. She also learned that sometimes the best advantage is to notice what is unspoken and to be brave enough to ask the question that no one thought to ask. That evening, Maya sat at her desk, thinking back over the day. She wrote in her notebook, "Today, I saw how small words and simple ideas can change the course of a big deal. I helped build trust and respect on two sides of the world. I will never forget how it felt to see people smile when you solve their hidden worries." Closed her diary with a soft smile, ready to rest and dream of the adventures still to come. As Maya walked out of the meeting room after her first big translation job, she could still feel her heart beating fast. Her cheeks were warm, and her mind kept replaying the voices, the questions, and the moments of silence that seemed to last forever. But she had done it. She had helped the company, and most importantly, she had helped her father, Samuel. For Maya, that meant everything. The office was buzzing with excitement. People who had never spoken to Maya before now smiled at her as she passed by. Some staff members even whispered to each other, "That's Samuel's daughter," as she spoke. Perfect Japanese in front of the CEO and the investors. Maya was not used to this kind of attention. She felt a little shy, but she was also proud. She realized that sometimes courage comes from doing something scary, even when you feel small. After a short break, Maya was called back to the conference room. The CEO, Mr. Scott, explained that the Japanese investors wanted to have a second round of talks, this time about the technical details of the company's products and how they could fit into the Japanese market. This was a big deal. The next part of the meeting would decide if the company would get the $1 million investment. Mr. Scott took a moment to thank Maya in front of everyone. "Maya, you were amazing in the first meeting," he said with a smile. "I know it's a lot of pressure, but we need your help again. You are our bridge." Maya nodded, feeling nervous again but also excited to prove herself. Samuel squeezed her shoulder gently before she went inside. "Just be yourself, Maya. You're stronger than you think," he whispered. The conference room felt different this time. The investors seemed more relaxed. They smiled at Maya and greeted her in Japanese, showing her a new level of respect. One of the investors, Mr. Sato, even said a small joke about having the youngest and smartest translator in America. Everyone laughed, and Maya felt the atmosphere grow warmer. This second part of the meeting was much more complicated. The company's engineers were invited to explain how their latest technology worked. They talked about computer software, electronic chips, and the ways their inventions could be used in hospitals and schools. Their words were full of technical terms that Maya had only read about in books or online. But she listened carefully, remembering what she had learned from her favorite teachers and from her own studies at home. Whenever someone used a word that didn't have a clear meaning in Japanese, Maya took a moment to find a way to explain it in simple language. Sometimes, she drew quick pictures on a whiteboard, using small diagrams to show how things worked. Her closely, nodding, and asking more questions. Maya could feel the energy in the room. She knew this meeting was not just about language, it was about trust. The investors needed to understand the technology, but they also wanted to see if the company was honest and prepared. Maya tried her best to help both sides communicate clearly. She made sure the engineers' answers were easy to understand. She also helped the investors express their own ideas and worries. There were moments of challenge. Once, one of the investors, Ms. Suzuki, asked a tough question about the safety of the new software. The engineers gave a long and complicated answer, full of numbers and industry terms. Maya paused, thinking hard. Then she summarized the main points, explaining in simple Japanese that the company had tested the software many times and always put safety first. She also mentioned how the company worked with hospitals to improve their products. The investors smiled and wrote down notes, clearly happy with Maya's clear explanation. The engineers and managers in the room started to rely on Maya, asking her to help them when they got stuck. They realized that she could do more than just translate. Words she could help everyone understand each other's hopes and concerns. At one point, Maya noticed that the investors were using a lot of polite words, but didn't seem completely satisfied. She remembered a lesson from her Japanese teacher. Listen to what is not said, not just what is said. Maya politely asked if there were any other worries or questions. The lead investor, Mr. Sato, opened up about his concerns with long-term support after the sale. Maya translated his worries gently, so the American team could respond honestly. Mr. Scott thanked Maya for helping the conversation become more open. He turned to the investors and said, "We are ready to work with you, not just today, but for many years." Maya's presence here is proof that we believe in the future and in building trust. Maya translated his words with feeling, knowing how important this message was. During a short break, Maya was invited to join the investors for tea. This was a big honor, and she knew it meant they respected her. The investors asked about her life, her school, and even her favorite Japanese books. Maya told them how she started learning Japanese because of her father's encouragement and her love for languages. The investors were touched by her story. One of them, Ms. Suzuki, said, "You are very lucky to have a father who believes in you." Meanwhile, Samuel was in the hallway, listening from outside the door. He wiped away a small tear of happiness. For so long, he had watched people ignore Maya and underestimate her. Now, she was at the center of something big. He felt so proud he thought his heart might burst. After tea, the meeting continued. The conversation became even more interesting. The Japanese investors began to ask Maya for her opinion about certain features of the products. At first, Maya was surprised. She explained that she was just a student. But the investors insisted that they wanted her honest feedback as a young person who understood technology. Maya gave her thoughts politely, suggesting that the company's new app could be more user-friendly for students her age. Mr. Scott and his team listened carefully to Maya's ideas. They realized that her fresh point of view was valuable. Mr. Scott made a quick decision. He asked Maya if she would like to join their team as an intern during her summer break. She looked at her father, who nodded with tears in his eyes. The investors clapped politely. Mr. Sato said, "This company is smart because they listen to young people and respect talent." Maya blushed, but she also smiled with pride. As the meeting ended, both sides were smiling. Mr. Scott and the investors shook hands. The atmosphere was now full of hope and trust. The company's future looked brighter than ever. When Maya and Samuel left the building that day, everyone in the office stopped to clap for them. People who had never spoken to Samuel now shook. His hand had thanked him. Maya hugged her father tightly. She knew that their lives were changing, not just because of the $1 million deal, but because they had finally been seen for who they really were. That night, Maya sat at home and wrote in her diary, "Today I learned that small voices can make big changes." Sometimes the most important bridges are built by people nobody notices until the moment they are needed most. Not in a quiet room, Samuel said a silent prayer of thanks. He had always known Maya was special. Now the whole world was beginning to see it too. Maya and her father stepped out into the bright sunlight, their hearts full of joy. The busy city street felt calmer now, as if the world had paused to celebrate what had just happened. Samuel looked at Maya with tears in his eyes and said softly, "You were amazing today." Maya smiled and squeezed his hand, remembering every moment in the boardroom, the nervous start, the polite bows, the tricky questions, and the final signatures. As they walked to their small car, people passing by stopped to congratulate them. A woman who worked in accounting called out, "Maya, you did it." A young engineer gave a thumbs up, and the receptionist waved excitedly. Maya felt a warm glow in her chest. She had never imagined that so many people would notice her. For years, she had been the quiet girl in the lobby, reading her books in a corner. Today, she had shown everyone what she could do. That evening at home, Maya sat at the kitchen table doing her homework, but her mind kept drifting back to the meeting. She wrote a note to herself. "Today, I helped bring two worlds together." She looked out of the window at the lights of the city and thought about what might come next. Mr. Scott had offered her an internship over the summer, and she knew that this chance could change her future. Samuel made dinner while talking about the next steps. "The CEO said they will create a special program for you," he explained. "They want you to learn about marketing, design, and maybe even software development. You'll work with real teams, not just sit at a desk." Maya's eyes grew wide with excitement and a little fear. It sounded wonderful, but she also worried about fitting in and learning new things so fast. Over the next few days, Maya balanced schoolwork with planning for her new role. She practiced her Japanese even more, reviewed basic business terms, and read about the company's products. At school, her friends noticed a change in her. She walked with a new confidence, and her classmates asked about her day at work. Maya answered shyly at first, but then she realized how proud she felt and began sharing parts of her story. Her friends listened in awe as she described the boardroom, the investors, and the moment the deal was signed. At home, Samuel and Maya spent evenings talking about big dreams. Samuel told her, "You deserve all of this and more. Remember to stay kind and humble. Maya nodded. She knew her father was right. No matter how high she climbed, she would always remember where she came from and the people who helped her get there. The summer came quickly. Maya's first day as an intern arrived before she knew it. She put on her best clothes, packed a notebook and pen, and hugged her father goodbye. Samuel walked her to the elevator, then pressed the button for the lobby. He gave Maya one last piece of advice. Listen carefully, ask questions, and don't be afraid to speak up. Maya smiled and nodded as the doors closed around her. Inside the building, she felt a mix of excitement and nerves. She remembered how she had walked into that first meeting, unsure if she could help, and now she was a full-fledged member of the team. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, ready for whatever came next. Her internship was everything she had hoped for, and more. She worked with the marketing team to create user-friendly brochures, helped the design team test prototypes, and even sat in on meetings about future product ideas. The employees treated her with respect, often asking her to translate or share her thoughts. Maya felt proud each time she helped solve a problem or made someone smile with her clear explanations. One day, Mr. Scott invited Maya to his office. He praised her work, saying, "You have a gift for connecting with people and making complex ideas simple. You remind me of why we started this company." He presented her with a small gift, a silver pen engraved with her name. Maya's eyes filled with tears as she accepted it. She felt valued and seen in a way she had never felt before. Back at home that night, Maya showed the pen to her father. Samuel ran his fingers over the engraving and said, "This pen will write your story. Keep using it to do good." Maya nodded, holding the pen carefully as if it were the most precious thing in the world. As the summer drew to a close, Maya reflected on how much she had changed. She had come into the company as a shy teenager who simply wanted to help her father. Now she was an intern, a valued member of a major deal, and a bridge between cultures. She knew that her life would never be the same. On her last day of the internship, the whole office gathered to say goodbye. The Japanese investors sent a bouquet of flowers with a note thanking Maya for her hard work and respect. The staff clapped as Maya walked through the lobby one last time. Samuel waited outside, ready to drive her home. Maya looked at him, feeling a mix of happiness and sadness, happy for all she had learned, sad that this chapter was ending. In the car, Samuel asked, "What will you do next?" Maya thought for a moment and said, "I want to keep learning languages, maybe add Chinese or Spanish. And I want to go to college for international business." Samuel smiled and nodded. "I believe you can do anything you set your mind to." When they arrived home, Maya unpacked her pen and notebook. She wrote a final entry in her diary. "This summer I learned that courage and kindness can open doors. I saw that people respect you when you show respect to them. I learned that sometimes the smallest voice can make the biggest difference." Years later, Maya would look back on that summer as the start of her career. She would become a successful interpreter and business leader, traveling the world and helping build partnerships between companies and cultures. But she would never forget the day her father's faith in her brought her into a boardroom full of strangers and how she closed $1 million deal with a simple act of translation and respect.